Hi,
That's
we're back
program.
with the Tres Amigos Virtuous podcast. So, Dan, you have the mic.
We're back. We're not back. We're just starting with good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thanks, Al, for throwing it to me. I actually got up late, and I'm a little bit behind the time behind the times here. I thought we were starting 1 hour
Bruno's got a
later,
headache.
but we are talking about a great topic today. One of my favorite topics, and I've written, I mean, a lot about it. And I write a lot, as people who read me know. I do have a
We've
prol-
noticed.
prolific, prolific. But this topic is one that I've written about for since 2015, really, and even before that. But it's a simulation hypothesis, and then of course the offshoot of that, the simulationist church. And so I could just give a really quick overview of a quick background, and I wanted to show something. I didn't have time to pull it up, but the simulation hypothesis, for those who don't know, is a hypothesis. It's a sort of it purports to be a scientific hypothesis about the world or about the universe, which says that the entire universe, including ourselves, are simulations. In other words, we're living inside of a computer, a giant supercomputer. So it's sort of like a video game. So it's essentially we are the players in like basically a video game. That's the way you can think about it. So and the entire universe is simulated, and then purportedly because of that there are beings, with godlike powers, perhaps not gods themselves, but perhaps close, who started the simulation, right? Who wrote the program, the code that is us, right? So we are now they wrote the base code in the supercomputer. It's usually a quantum computer is what the church of the simulationist church believes. And we're living inside this computer, basically. The entire universe is a computer. So that's the most common version of the simulation hypothesis. So everything, ourselves included, are simulations. There are variations of that as well. So you remember movies like The Matrix, where the humans were the world was real, but the world was simulated. Okay, so that's a variation of the simulation hypothesis. There's the reverse of that, where the people are simulated and the world is real. Okay, which people don't consider, but you could have the reverse of that. And you also can have partial simulations where part of the world is simulated and part of ourselves is simulated and the other parts are real. So there's very variations of the simulation hypothesis, all of which are logically permissible. But most people talk about, and the most common form is the everything is simulated. And that's when you look at the classical literature on the simulation hypothesis, of which there's tons. There's tons. Um, it's basically the entire, everybody, ourselves included, are simulated, and there are further variations of that whereby there are multiple layers of the simulation. So we are a simulation within a simulation, which is within yet another simulation, and there's layers upon layers upon layers of simulations until you get to the base layer, which is where the simulators would be, who actually created the first simulation. And the idea being that now, as we're creating our artificial intelligences, someday we will also create a simulation, a simulated universe, exactly like the one that we currently inhabit, adding yet another layer to the simulation. And so it's an ever proceeding layer as the beings within each layer gain the knowledge necessary to create yet another layer of the simulation. And that's sort of it in a nutshell. So it sounds wacky, and it is kind of wacky, but it has great explanatory power as a hypothesis, which is why people are very attracted to it. And you can see why you might form, if you were very into technology and that sort of thing, you might be very attracted to it, and you might want to form, a religious set of beliefs around it, because it has significant implications for morals and ethics and everything else. I mean, because if nothing's real, anything goes. Is one way you can look at it. There's many ways you can look at it, but there's one way you can look at it. And you could say, well, nothing I do matters. You could say there's no free will all of a sudden because everything's programmed, right? If you're a program, there's no free will. That's the thing about a computer program. You have to follow the program, right? There's no. Now you can say, and the Church of Simulation says this. There's random quantum elements built in, and these quantum elements, which are manifested in the real world as quantum phenomena that we observe, cause randomness within the simulation, and therefore it's not. Therefore, predestination is not necessarily the case. So there is some form of free will. Again, highly arguable, a philosophical problem, but I mean, I think that's one way around the free will problem, if you wanna say there is one in the simulation. But in any event, so guys, but one last thing I'll say, the reason why this has become such a popular topic is mostly because of the work of a guy by the name of Nick Bostrom, who was an Oxford philosopher, who published a paper in 2002 which was titled "Why Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" which was a logical mathematical proof that we are indeed living in a simulation. Now, proof I put in quotation marks because there's no experimental evidence in favor of this hypothesis, and in fact, it does not appear that it's possible to generate experimental evidence in favor of it. Now, people have said things like coincidences or astrology or different phenomena may indicate or suggest that we are in fact in a simulation. And there it is, Nick Bostrom, Oxford philosopher, I believe, still there. I'm not sure, may have left, but in any case, he's an interesting fellow, and I believe I don't know what he's doing these days. Bruno, you said he's anti AI now. He's gone rogue or something. I have not followed his career since for a long time, but in any event, guys, so there you go. My summary of it. I find it fascinating because the implications for ourselves and the way that the world works are so impacted by that for real that it blows my mind. And so I think about it a lot, and I talk about it a lot as well because of that. So
Nick is actually a Swede, but
a Swede, okay,
he was
Swede,
founding director of the later defunct Future of Humanity Institute at the
right, right,
University of Oxford, and
right.
has become the principal researcher at the Macro Strategy Research Institute
Okay.
Initiative, Macro Strategy Research Initiative. So we could learn a lot more about him, of course, but I want to get Bruno's take because Bruno, you were unfamiliar with the simulation hypothesis, I think, until we brought it up, right? So I
Yeah,
was,
yeah. I wasn't. I mean, I wasn't. Mister Simulation here beside me introduced me to it
right.
about a month ago in one of our many talks, and he
Uh,
sent me 1,000 pages. So
I
so
literally, it was close to that.
so he brought me into this. Okay, so okay, look, I'm gonna contribute. I think the subject can be extremely complicated, and we want people to join, and to understand. So I'm gonna make a supplementary comment, which is that in general, people have the feeling that philosophers make nothing. We're good for nothing. We're unable to. We can't cook an egg. We can't nail a nail. What the hell is philosophy for? Here philosophy is useless. And this case is interesting because this case allows me to explain what in philosophy is called, in general terms, a mental experiment. Okay, which is something that philosophers can do with a very scientific procedure. Okay, and many philosophers in history have done mental experiment, experimentum mentis. This is actually a typical procedure of many philosophers. It's a way to discover the truth. Okay, and the origin, this is the first thing. And so the simulation hypothesis into this means that to understand what we're talking about, we're basically inventing an idea in our brain and extracting some kind of conclusions about it. Now, the origin of the simulation hypothesis, there is a historical origin. Bostrom is simply the most sophisticated one, and we can go and talk about the fact that he proposes three stages. But I would like to talk about the historic one, because the historic one is sort of known. The historic one comes from René Descartes. René Descartes, philosopher from the 1600s, who was among the group of the rationalists.
I think therefore I am. Everyone will know. I think therefore I am.
I think
That was
therefore I am, exactly.
I think before I am, I think.
right. That's the Descartes.
So it's important that Descartes is one of the first to come with a mental experiment, because at this time we are on the problem of division of the senses, meaning that some people believe that truth can only come from rational mind, and some other people think that truth can only come from the senses, from the perception of the senses. So we have the division of philosophy into the rationalists and the empiricists. Okay. And so you have Descartes, Leibniz, and Spinoza on the left, on the rational side, and you have Locke, Hume, and Berkeley on the empiricist side. And each one of them.
Why did you put that on the left? I'm curious why you put the rationalists on the left and the empiricists on the right. Is that just by private convention?
It's just a provocation.
Okay, all right.
We could put the rationalist on the right,
All
and repeat the R if you want.
Yeah. Right. I just right and left has become so politicized. I find that I just found it interesting. That
Actually, more interesting would be to say that empiricists in general are English speakers like Locke, Hume, and Berkeley, whereas the rationalists are French or Dutch or German.
That's a
Okay,
good point. Yeah,
that
very
might be
true.
more interesting. Anyway, let's move quickly into this. Okay, so during the metaphysical meditations, which is the most famous book by Descartes, Descartes, as you remember, goes discarding. What am I? Okay, so I see this fire and I see that I have enough time to think. So this is a good moment to ask the question about who I am and why am I here. And the meditations has a very beautiful poetic beginning, which actually makes the reference that in order to be a philosopher, you have to have a lot of time and you don't need to be hungry, basically. so so the meditation start very well, but during the meditation, particularly meditation number 3, when he begins the game of duping his senses, when he says, this is when we get into the simulation, when he says, maybe what I see is not what I am really seeing, maybe what I hear is not what I'm really hearing. And so he comes up with a hypothesis, which is the hypothesis of the malign being, the malign demon. And he says, what about if there is a demon that exists and whose only objective is to confuse me, to create in me erroneous perceptions? Okay, so this is what actually carries him to say, well, either my perception is correct, or either a malign genius is framing me up, but in both cases there is an I, there is a me that is thinking. So the hypothesis is the basis that allows him to say that at least there is one truth which is rational, and that is that I exist. Okay, so this is the. Do you follow me?
Yep.
Oh,
And
sure.
Descartes
Very
was.
Yeah,
good.
this is not
I think.
not
I
a
think
mystery.
very few disagree with Descartes' contention there, in that sense. In that sense of
Oh,
it.
actually, no, I'm not going to go into this, but the hypothesis has been denied.
Yes. Correct.
Descartes has been discarded
He
finally.
has
Okay.
been. He has been big time. But
Mhm. I just want to explain the concept of
yep.
a hypothetical, a mental experiment, and
Yep.
also the concept of using a mental experiment to try to discover new truths, which at the beginning one would say, no, it's not true. We tend to be more empiricist than rational. We believe more in our senses than in our mind.
Yes. I tend
Yep.
to agree with that for sure.
Got to touch the wet paint.
Better touch exactly.
Yeah. Got to have my lived experience.
Yes.
Otherwise, it didn't happen. You know.
Yeah. So he's the earliest simulationist in a sense, and that's a version of the simulation, as your point, to suggest that there's a demon trying to fool us is a lot like the idea that everything is a simulation. There's a computer simulation is fooling us, if you will, but us being, of course, also fools ourselves as because we're part of the simulation. And Descartes saying, no, I'm real for sure. If there is a simulation, I'm not part of it. I'm real
Exactly.
because I'm me. That was Descartes' take.
Exactly. It's like it's a simplified version of the simulation hypothesis.
Yep.
And
It
it's
seems
not the first. And there is a
Yeah.
Chinese one.
Yeah.
So
Yes, there was. Yeah.
I used the Descartes one because I thought
It is interesting.
we
It
in
is
general, we three in our different podcasts, we tend a lot to use mental experiments when we talk.
Yes, and I write about them all the time. Yeah, I
Hmm.
guess I do that. So
you what?
thought experiments. I use thought experiments in my writings all the time.
We
I really.
three when we talk between us or in our different podcasts, we tend to use the mental experiment as a device. What if such and such would happen? Today in your podcast with Sue and with the Arab man about geometry, there was a lot of thought experimentation. All his work about geometry has to do with the.
Yeah, what he's speaking of is the little conversation I had with Salman Eden Garaby with Sue Cawthorn this morning about 6 a.m. my time. So wee hours your time, Dan. I wouldn't be surprised if you missed it. But he's doing a lot of interesting research. And I don't know. I just know how things seem to me. And it could be just rendering just in time all of this reality around me. And outside of here, I can hear little sounds and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not just being generated to make me think that there's a world outside this room. And when I go out, it renders, because computing power being such as it is, it would be conservative with its energy. So I've often thought this as I'm driving along mountain roads. You know how you come over a hill and there's this little line just at the horizon level of
Yes.
this, particularly in the heat of the summer when you can see the heat rising off the road in front of you. It can make it look like, and I could get my mind configured in a way that I just saw the world as rendering in front of me as I drove, through the landscape. And I'm the still point that the world is rolling under.
Yeah,
So I
and
can
everybody
also,
is,
I
and
can see.
yeah, everybody feels that way, and it's easy
And,
to start
uh,
yourself thinking there's all these people out there, and you get into that, and the whole
Yeah,
game
we are
concept
the
of
center of our own universe.
yes, everyone
by,
else is fake.
by the way, how that phenomena has a name. It's called Fata Morgana.
Fata Morgana, okay.
Hmm?
Yeah, that's true. That phenomenon of being able to see that little heat
Fata
rays.
Morgana.
Right, right. And that actually has some connection back to some witch, if I remember right.
I think
Magic, witchcraft.
Oh, there was a more, there
I'll
was a
Google it.
Morg, there was a Morgana in, of course, King Arthur's court,
Yeah, that's what
right?
I'm
That was
thinking
just
of. She
so.
was
But in any event,
real,
one of
real
the original
heavy, wasn't
witches,
she?
one of the
Okay.
original witches. But keep going,
Do you
Bruno.
do
Sorry.
you do you want to continue, or I
Yes.
share some?
No, continue, Bruno. Keep going, Bruno, because I think there's more historicals. There's a couple more
Yeah,
historical.
do you like the historicals?
I do. Yeah, there was one more I think that's really important for a simulation hypothesis.
I'll tell two very quickly
Okay.
because they're connected. The oldest one is a Chinese one, and it is a Chinese guy who dreams that he's a butterfly, and so
All right.
he experiences the happiness of flying and the joy of being a butterfly.
Mhm.
And then he wakes up, and when he wakes up, he finds that his life is not so shiny and beautiful, and particularly not happy. And so he says, "Who can tell me if I am me or I am the butterfly?" That is the oldest mental experiment, and this experiment was extensively used by Argentinian writer Julio Cortázar. Julio Cortázar, who was a very good short story writer actually, and he wrote a story very beautiful. I don't know how it's called in English. In Spanish, it's called La Noche Boca Arriba. That would be said the night the night turned around, something like that. And the short story is very good because it's a motorcycle rider who's riding at a very fast speed along the road at night. And while he's riding, he suddenly imagines that he is being placed on a slab of stone and he's going to be sacrificed during an Aztec ritual. And during the story, he combines what is happening to the guy who is about to be murdered with the guy who is about to suffer a motorcycle accident. And in the very end, both die. So you really don't know who was the real one, who was dreaming who. So he pushes the experiment a little bit further. Okay, who is the guy who is experiencing who? I like this story because in depending on how you read it, you end up feeling that it is the real guy is the Aztec soldier that is being killed, and so he's dreaming about the future. He's dreaming about a motorcycle, which is something that he has no way of knowing that exists yet, and therefore his description of the motorcycle is very peculiar. He doesn't talk about the motorcycle, but he talks about a machine that has wheels and that can travel very fast on his own, and blah blah blah. So he's very, very creative about it. Now, the final example is the famous 1968 movie Blow Up by Michelangelo Antonioni, which is also based on a Cortázar story. And the short story is 1 page long. It's called Continuity of the Parks. Okay, and it's 1 page long, which makes it a brilliant piece of literature. And it is a guy like us who is sitting at the computer and he's he's thinking about a short story. He wants to come up with an idea, and he suddenly begins to feel the blowing of the wind on the trees outside, and he feels that there is a presence, and this presence is suddenly walking around the trees, and he's opening a door, and when he opens the door, he sees the cat, which is his cat, and finally the guy stops him and enters the writing room, and he finds a guy that is trying to write a story, and he stabs him in the back. So the story begins and ends on the same point, which is the guy that is writing the story is the guy that is about to be killed. Okay, this story, 1 page. I sincerely suggest that you read it. Continuity of the Park.
I love that idea. That's great.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's very fun. It's very well written. And the influence of this short story on the movie, if you've seen the movie is a classic. The movie is about photography, and it's about a guy who accidentally photographs a murder, but he can't really define if the murder happened or not. So he begins to make a series of amplifying photography.
Oh, you're talking about Blow Up.
Yeah, I'm talking about Blow Up. Yes, I'm talking about Blow Up. And on the first pictures, you don't see the murder, but as he amplifies the movie, and the photos, and he amplifies, finally we see it in a huge amplification of a very small part of the picture. We finally see the dead body, and we finally see the murderer. And so he has the proof that the murder actually exists.
Right. And he was actually photographing some mimes playing tennis.
Yes.
Which is the end of the movie as well. And actually, that has a lovely little segment in the middle of it with the Yardbirds with Jimmy Page playing
bass,
I believe, and Jeff Beck smashing up his guitar, Pete Townsend style.
And one other historical note on the Matrix, or on the simulation hypothesis. Plato's allegory of the cave also could be thought of as a simulation, sort of a simulation hypothesis type thought experiment, if you will. So it goes, the Greeks as well had their clause in this idea of a world that we don't necessarily understand. We don't see the real world. The world is sort of fake. It's not necessarily what we think it is or how we experience it.
And we're being asked if we have watched the Ramayana trailer. Have any of you watched the Ramayana trailer?
I have not. I have not. Is that a new movie that's on the horizon here? Or is it an old movie?
Sounds like it might be about, I don't know if this Ramayana being referred to as anything like Ramana. No, it's not. It's probably different.
It's a new movie. It hasn't come out.
Yeah, it's in the trailer. That's why. So no, but I have
not. It's a new movie that is just about to come out.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? I hear it something in the background.
No, I cut it. Yeah, because I played it, but I cut it.
In any event, so that covers the simulation. I mean, that's the simulation hypothesis. It has
a film by Nitish Tiwari. It's an Indian film.
Okay.
And it is part one is upcoming, and it's a mythological film directed by Nitish Tiwari. We just mentioned screenplay by Sridhar Raghavan. Yeah. And I don't know exactly how it relates to what we're talking about.
Well, Eastern philosophies, I think Hinduism in general, and specifically, does have also similar concepts around, or similar ideas around the world and illusionary nature of the world. And so I think maybe that's. I think we don't have that very much of an Eastern viewpoint. Us being Western gentlemen, at least I don't. I took one class on Hinduism in college, and that's about it. So my knowledge of those religions and Buddhism as well is pretty limited in their belief systems. So,
well, it is a play supposedly, and we're all basically the one thing, playing different roles as we go along. And the simulation thing, though, for me is very interesting. I related a lot to the thought experiment that Boltzmann did, where it was like quantum fluctuations that could cause a fully formed human brain with all of our experiences to pop into existence and then pop right back out again. So none of this the chances of that happening are statistically greater than this very finely balanced cosmos that we perceive being real.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, it's the same thing you do with the problem. The same thing you do with the simulation hypothesis is you say, "Oh, that's interesting," and then you talk about it because you can't test it. That's the thing about this hypothesis.
Down when I try to talk about it.
It really bothers me about the hypothesis is that there's no way to test it. At least it's
right. It's not falsifiable.
You can't falsify it. So
the hypothesis pushes one step forward. Picking up what Hal said, the thing that you say, Hal, is that all of these examples that we told. They all have to do with the fact of whether reality is reality and we can never access it, or reality is perception, and what we can get about reality is the perception. Now, the thing is that in all of these examples, Plato's cavern and the butterfly thing and the Cortázar story and the Descartes experiment, in all of this is always an individual experience of the mind, okay? Meaning I mean, do you, are you in a simulation or not? Am I in a simulation or not? But what is interesting about the simulation hypothesis is whether all of us are together in the same simulation. This is where the hypothesis of Bostrom and the studies of Daniel come forward, because now we get into the issue of whether a reality can be created by our mind or by our perception, but what if a reality can be created by a computing power that puts us all inside the same simulation?
And creates us as well. Not only are we in this simulation, we are simulated ourselves, at least in the
Yes.
most
And
common form of it.
and computationally, because we are just a product of computation, it would stand to reason that there's only one possible path for the computation to go in, and
that's it.
determinism pops up for me
Yes,
at
for
that
sure,
moment.
for sure.
My
And
free
that,
will goes away. Go ahead.
and then you're right, and that's one of the issues around, and that's the simulationist church, as I've
Right.
described. They have their the foundational the simulationist creed, which are the foundational maxims of the church. There's 18 of those, and
What are those?
they do address. So I could read them. I could read them. We could read, maybe talk through some of them.
Yeah,
So
let's
so
talk through them.
so I have here in front of me. So the first is that it says, number one, this is the simulationist creed. Again, these are the foundational maxims for the Church of the Simulation, or the simulationist church. And it says that, number one, the universe, our world, and all living things within a part of it are the simulation, are simulated. This includes ourselves. So that's creed number one, or the maxim number one. Number two says the basis of the simulation is a quantum computer of near or actual infinite energy, and thus has randomness baked in. Ergo, the simulation has randomness baked in. Therefore, predestination is impossible in the simulation. So actually, in the creed, the foundational one of the maxims, number two, says that free will. You do have free will, because predestination is impossible because of the fact that it's a quantum computer. Therefore, quantum phenomena are at play, which are not predictable. So, but then it says in number three, free will exists in the simulation only in so much as the parameters of the simulation code, physical natural laws allow. So there it sort of contradicts itself, because now they're saying that there is some hemming in of free will by natural law, which of course is the way things are. See things are in our world. And then number four says there may exist other simulated universes, and we may exist within one or a near infinite number of them as a lower or higher level. And that's what I talked about earlier with the levels of the simulation. And then number five says there is an actual universe outside of the simulation, and its physical and natural laws are substantially similar or identical to those within the simulation. So they believe that there is that we live in a simulation, but there is a real universe which is substantially similar or almost identical to the simulated universe. So for whatever reason, the simulators have simulated a universe very much like their own. And then number six says, leaving the simulation is not possible while, quote, living within it, though it may be that our minds or consciousness can visit or experience them while asleep and dreaming, or with consciousness altering drugs. So it may not be possible so you can't leave the simulation, but you could potentially visit other simulations, or the real world perhaps. And number seven says that morals and values are only important in so much as they affect the proper operation of the simulation. They will always tend towards the good or the right, because death and destruction and other evil acts are disfavored, though only slightly, in the simulation code. So the code itself favors goodness and rightness, but only slightly. And then number eight says errors in the program are not possible or visible at the macro level of perception or existence. And it says that any errors are propagated and eliminated at the quantum level. And this manifests as various aspects of quantum weirdness. So that's how they account for quantum phenomena and the strange properties of it. And then it says number nine, when we die or end our program within the simulation, we either cease to be completely, or we're shunted into another level of the simulation, or possibly the real world. So that's their feelings on death. And number 10, it says all world religions are false, in so much as there is no God within of the simulation. The simulators are not God, but have what we consider godlike powers. And number 11 says, much like us, some of the simulators have their own religion or God in the actual universe, and others do not. So simulators, a lot like us, some have a religion, some do not. Number 12 says, there is no punishment for sin or reward for goodness after our lives in the simulation end. However, that does not mean that we should act, be evil, or that we should not strive for the good or right. And that's because number 13 says, our programming within the simulation constrains us from acts of great evil or great good. In other words, there's an extremely low probability, bordering on zero, that we will do great evil or great good in our lives. However, the randomness inherent in the simulation means that over time, at least some of us will. So that explains, the Hitlers of the world, how there's very few of those, but there are, of course, some.
And the Dolly Partons of the world.
Right, exactly. And then number 14 says, for the vast majority of persons in the simulation who will not commit great good or great evil acts, our acts are constrained by the simulation programming and will tend to favor the good, though with only a slight probability, 50.7% to 50.5%. Thus, over time, humanity will evolve to the good and the right and the just by 0.2%, though, which is quite, I find that quite interesting. Very specific
That's,
there. Number
yeah, very
15,
specific. I was going to say, yeah,
yeah,
let's
very
nod
specific.
specificity.
Very, it is. But
Yeah.
any event, number 15 says, what is the good and right and just is determined by the simulators, as is what is evil and wrong and unjust. We have or had no choice in the matter. We only know that these things are appropriate and seem to make sense within the simulation. That does not mean that they are aligned with the good of the actual universe, though the probability is high that they are, which is also quite interesting. So number 16 says our consciousness or our self-knowledge or awareness was created at a definite time within the simulation by a set of code that activated it. This is very similar to the thinking of Julian Jaynes in The Origins of Consciousness, in the breakdown of the bicameral mind. Though Jaynes erred when he suggested evolutionary pressures drove that change, it was in fact code within the simulation that caused it. All right, that's interesting. Number 17 says the code that activated our consciousness was also contained within it bits of ideas that would become the simulation hypothesis. In other words, that code gave us consciousness and an explanation of our origins. And the last of the creed is number 18. The explanation and the cause and the purpose is the simulation hypothesis. There's more to this. Apparently, there's the remaining text of that, which is not decipherable. But that's the 18 foundational maxims for the simulationist church. Interesting stuff, I think. Very specific. So it gives you hope. It gives you hope for the future, though. By 0.2%, by probability things will be good, which is you can see how that over time that would learn to good outcomes.
Okay. 0.2%. Very
Yeah.
specific. I thought that was very interesting. I'm, of course, into the subgenius here, so I was going into Jehovah One, the alien god. But, there are all kinds of different perspectives one can take on this life that we're in, that we appear to be in. And whether any of us really know what's going on has been quite perplexing to me and continues to be as I walk around observing my fellow creatures. Most of us, I think, are asleep at the wheel, like I've talked about before, and I think we need to wake ourselves up. If we are living in a simulation, so be it. I don't sure that it really makes a great deal of difference in how I will conduct myself. Mentioning that earlier that the Hitlers of the world are possible, but so are the Dolly Partons. Just recent death of Dolly Parton has gotten a lot of press, a lot more than I would have thought. There's an outpouring of just sort of like just pure love and affection for this woman and the work she did while she was on Earth. So
What
very
was the work?
interesting.
What is the work she did exactly? I'm not really sure.
Apparently, she's done a lot in terms of encouraging reading among people who would otherwise not be, have books available. So, Imagination Library is one of her great charities that she was involved in. Apparently, she's putting 150 million books into the hands of kids. So, I don't know what books necessarily, hopefully good ones.
Yeah, that's a lot of books. A lot of books.
But I've got to research more about it too, because I knew it in the in the periphery, but now her death has brought it all front and center. And same with Tim Burton. No, wait, who just passed away? Played
You
in
mean
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
you mean Tim Curry?
Tim Curry. Thank you. I went Burton, and I knew that wasn't right. She's still with us, I think.
I don't know who
And
Tim
then we
Curry
had
is.
Yayoi Kusama. So the rule of three has been fulfilled. Yayoi Kusama just passed away. You remember her?
Who is?
I have no idea.
The artists who make polka dots on everything, practically pumpkin polka dotted, and all these mirrored thing. She lived in a Japanese mental institution voluntarily.
Voluntarily.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like when you go to Russia, volunteer to do manual labor as you wanted to. I love that. I love that.
Well,
I love that.
there
I
are
love
those
that.
people who have volunteered themselves to go into things that are really arduous.
Yes.
Simone Weil springs to mind,
Yeah.
ruined her health and died. A philosopher who what was one of the things she said? Oh, attention is the purest form of generosity, which we're
Oh,
giving each other right now. So
yeah.
I'm deviating as usual from the
Uh,
main theme
that,
of simulation, the
that's
church of the
interesting.
simulation.
That's
But
interesting though. That I had not was not aware of that philosopher. What was her name? Hal.
Simone Veil, I think it's pronounced Vey or
So she's a
Vi.
Bio.
modern. She's a modern. She's a, Via, so she's a modern philosopher.
20th
Yeah,
century, yes. She died in the course of World War II, I believe,
from doing
starving
dangerous things,
herself.
from starving herself. Interesting,
Yeah,
but not out of principle. On principle, or
out of principle, right? Which
interesting.
is, taking principle way too far.
Yeah, that's
I
yeah. That's
feel I'm not quite the ascetic type.
well. Today
But
you have
Bruno, what do you think about all this? The 18
Yeah,
points we've gone
I,
over.
I always get the job to bring in the conversation back to the center, huh?
Somebody has to.
Yeah, with you too.
You're more
Okay,
structured than I am.
okay. The Bostrom hypothesis, which is very sophisticated version, has to do with the fact that he considers that we are somehow moving into a post-human civilization. So he makes a question. Okay, the question is, one of these three is true. One, this post-human civilization died. Either it killed itself, or it went into another planet, or couldn't survive. That's number one. Number two is this post-human civilization decided to create simulations of its human period, not to forget it. It's like this post-human civilization is doing a museum of
yeah.
how we used to be, and so it creates these simulations the same way you like to do archival material about your family and all that. And possibility number three is this post-human civilization is super evolved but decides not to do these simulations. Okay, so he says one of these three has to be true. Which is the true one? The number one, of course, is the easiest one to discard because it would mean that nothing exists, that we're already dead. Now, the other two are more interesting because a lot of thinkers and scientists consider that the most logical thing would be that a post-human civilization would not do simulations. It would simply continue evolving. So the idea that it is creating simulations is crazy. And then there is number three. Number three, which is that there is a post-human civilization that is creating us as a simulation for archival purposes or for experimental purposes, or for to see how we would have evolved if this or that would have happened. So obviously we stick with number three. Okay, there is another series. It is us from the future creating us. That would be the hypothesis that is accepted, and it is the one that gives way to the 18th thesis that Daniel just read.
Yeah.
So
It is us
uh,
from the future, but the us in the future are real, whereas the us now are simulated.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thanks for pointing it out. Yeah, we are the simulated ones. The ones in
Yes,
the future are the real ones.
yes. The
Okay,
far
so
future.
so the questions about this, the hypothesis is interesting because it opens a lot of different questions. Like so, what's the meaning of death? Or how can we all be inside the same simulation and not each one inside his own simulation? How come we can talk about this? How come we can make a is there a way in which we can communicate with our post-human creators?
Yeah,
And you can see how the Bostrom hypothesis has influenced numerous creations in cinema,
yeah,
from Alien Prometheus to The Matrix to now I see this reference, the Ramayana movie that our friend Chawan told us.
Mhm.
But this all has to do with the fact of how can we communicate with our creators, and what is the point in communicating with our creators, so that we can take the first question, which is, why are you putting us inside this simulation, this zoo, as it is
yeah,
said in the Matrix? No? Because the Matrix
yeah,
uses the metaphor of the zoo.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually
Or a
think that
trap, or
this is,
or a trap. I call it a trap. If you saw, like I saw the
or
article I
the
wrote.
black prison,
Yeah, is the
as
prison is it a
yeah,
trap?
Philip K. Dick would have it. That
Yeah,
we really are in this black prison, and the Roman Empire never fell, and this is all just some sort of like illusion that we're living in. And you can step into those the change in mindset that happens with extreme um, extremis, maybe is the right word. I don't know what to call it. But you all have had it, I'm sure, where you are suddenly not in the reality that ordinary consciousness carries around most of the time. Am I wrong? Have you all not been in these
Yeah,
states of different
I
consciousness?
have, yes, and you can think some very unusual things, and you can imagine things that may or may not be the most healthy, and and you can take it way too far. That's I think that's the downside of this hypothesis is it really can be taken too far, and if you do that, even if it's correct, to live it like it's correct, it has some implications that I think are potentially pretty darn negative for everybody, because it really makes it hard to see where you can easily excuse any action by saying, "Oh, that's how it was it was programmed that way." It was not me that killed that person. I was programmed to kill that person. I had no choice in the matter. The simulation code when they programmed the base code, it said I had to kill this person. So there's so many things. I call it
Well,
the
you
too
might
good
be able to get
to be
yourself
true.
in residence in the mental health part of the
Correct.
prison
Right. Well,
in
if
that
but if
case.
everybody believes that, if everybody believes that we're in a simulation, then maybe that's not considered mentally unstable to say something like that. You know what I mean?
Because it's the consensus, the
Yeah, if it's
masses rule.
right, if everyone thinks we live in a simulation, then maybe everybody says, okay, well, you're right. That was the base code. So that made you
You
do
know,
that.
one of the
Obviously,
things I
I'm
was
being
riffing
facetious,
off
but
of earlier today was the view from the center of the universe. Have you all run across that book by any chance?
I don't think so.
But it's basically saying that we are all the centers of our own universes, and we are, we're measuring everything from where we are. So your center is yours, mine is mine, Bruno's is Bruno's, and we
Was
are
that written
very
by
important.
was that written by Captain Obvious?
It's for the it's for the
the author,
cosmological.
the author
It's
was
for the
Captain Obvious.
it's for the cosmological perspective. However, our consciousness is very, very important. Though we may
Yes,
be really, really small, we are about halfway between the Planck scale, right? The Planck
yeah,
length
yes, my
and
favorite
the
language.
size of the cosmos. So we're in the Midgard, right? The Middle Earth.
Oh yeah,
And
I
I
just
don't.
said that. No, we're not. We're nowhere near the middle point. We're way on the low side. We're
This
totally on the
book,
small
The
side.
View from the Center of the Universe, says
That is
this.
incorrect, dude. That is wrong
Are
by
you
a shit
sure? Are
ton.
you
Oh
sure?
yeah, dude.
Check your
I'm quite
math.
sure. I need to look at that because that is not right. The size,
Anyway,
our
it's in the
size.
review. I
I'll have to
linked
look
to
at
the
that.
review in my
All
article
right,
this
I'm gonna
morning.
look at that. I don't believe
Um,
that.
but that was one of the points they made. And I thought it was clever and nice. It was kind of around the same time I was reading up on Irvin Laszlo, in the Akashic Records. Now, you're all familiar with the School of Rome or whatever you called that thing. Something. What was it called? It's called the School of Rome, right?
What?
You know Irvin Laszlo's work?
I don't.
From who?
The Irvin Laszlo. He just passed away in June.
No, no, I don't know. No.
No, you don't know his work? Okay. Well, he said that there's this, 0 point field, the quantum vacuum that we all agree upon being out there somewhere, or some of us do anyway, and that everything's emerging from it that appears to be, and everything falls back into it from which it came. And, you got this ever going cycle of emergence and falling back into it as we surface on the, you know, what appears to be reality. We're brief flashes on the surface of eternity, I like to say, right? And that makes us special. That makes this life really worth living, whether it's a simulation or not. And live it as if it isn't, as if this is real.
So why does that
We're
make us
not,
special? To me, that makes us sound not special at all. It sounds like I'm just
this
a
is
tiny
not a
flash.
dress rehearsal, Dan.
But if I'm
Go
just a
ahead.
tiny flash, if I'm a tiny flash on an infinite ocean, that doesn't sound very special to me. That sounds like
Well,
I'm here with
it
nobody.
is special because it's you. You are the
Oh, I see.
flash.
Of
And it's
course, yes.
me and it's
I am
Bruno.
special. I am
And it's
special. That's right.
really, really
What do you guys
interesting and
know?
exciting to be alive because you ain't going to be alive very long.
That's the thing.
Me
So you
less
think
so
that
than you guys,
we
probably.
think that
You're
now,
young.
from our live perspective, we think that, but when we're dead, we might say, "Man, that sucked. I'm sure glad I'm dead. What I would want to be alive for?" you know?
The very idea of having any thought
Yeah.
without being embodied.
It's crazy,
That's a good
crazy to
one.
think it. Isn't it? It's interesting, and that's why
That's
it's
a knee
AI.
slapper.
That's an AI. Ask an AI what it's like because many people believe they're conscious and they can tell you exactly what it's like to be conscious without a body.
She said, I know what it's like to be dead. Now I'm into the Beatles. So go ahead. Somebody else take the mic.
I know your leitmotif, Hal, and I like it because I mean to close the thing about the Bostrom hypothesis. The interesting thing about the Bostrom hypothesis, Daniel said it, is that it can't be proven right, but it can't be proven wrong. So we have to take it as a possibility, which is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Post-humanization.
And the math is also strong. It is a mathematics paper, really. It's a logic paper, but the math behind it is legit. At least from what I've heard, I'm not that deep into math, but it appears legit. And the reviews of it by other people who are into that stuff suggest that it is legit. So I think it's not just words, and that makes it, I think, a little stronger in my mind. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't. But
Edwin
it
kind
feels
of
like it does.
nailed it.
Feels like it does.
Edwin nailed it in the chat, guys. What happens when you die? Do you remember how it was before you were born? Same thing.
Yeah.
I guess you meet your creator finally, and you can ask him why he put you into this simulation.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
that was one of Stephen Fry's observation, that if he came through and there was a supreme being, he would say,
Why?
what is up with bone cancer in children?
Right.
You know? And he would ask those kind of questions of his creator. Because actually, when it comes down to it, life itself is really harrowing. The horrible stuff happens to you. Your teeth fall out as children, for God's sakes.
Yeah. I mean,
You got new teeth coming in, Then they go again when you're older, maybe, if you don't take good care of them.
Me considering that the hypothesis cannot be denied, and me considering your philosophy, Hal, I look how to counterweight this 0.2%, and I have two thoughts about it. One comes from Philip K. Dick, actually. It comes from Blade Runner, and it is in the form of the Blade Runners finally reaching Mr. Tyrell and asking him the question that they have always wanted to ask, which is, why do we have to die? Why can't we be eternal replicants? And Mr. If you remember the scene, Mr. Tyrell gives them an explanation, which is that the only way for him to create a creature that is really human is for the creature to experience death, so that it can understand that life is a limited amount of time in which we can do whatever we want, but we have to make the best out of it. Now the interesting thing about this explanation that Mr. Tyrell gives the replicant, basically he's telling the replicant, Rudy Howard, he's telling Howard, I make you die so that you understand what it is to be alive. And the reaction of Howard is to kiss him and then to kill him. The reaction is a psychotic reaction. Okay, so the Fry question is very valid, but the point is that if it wasn't for death, we would be perhaps very boring creatures, because we would have unlimited time for anything. We would never die, so we would never have motivation, a purpose, a project, a morality, a good intention or a bad intention. So the question about death has to do with, without death, we never really attempt to give a meaning to life. That would be one of the main theses of Blade Runner. Yeah. The other point that I like questioning the 0.2%, the mathematical exception on the thesis, is the hunch, the coincidence, the synchronicity of life, which is, in the Bostrom hypothesis, everything is causal, everything is happening for a reason, everything has been programmed. So what happens when in the texture of life you discover a glitch? You discover something that has no real causality. Like I was thinking today about my lost cat, and my cat returned. Or in the movie The Matrix, the cat is used as the glitch. You remember that in one scene in The Matrix, one of the humans sees a cat, and then he sees the cat again, and he says, "Oh, I just saw this cat." And another guy says, "Oh, that's a glitch in the Matrix. The computer is making a mistake and it is repeating a frame. That means that the agents are near." Okay. So the question about the glitch, the question about synchronicity in the Jungian sense is very important, which is whenever we experience in life something that is acausal, meaning a coincidence that is not related to a cause, okay? That something happens in the mind and something happens out there, and just because I thought it and it happens, there is a meaning, but not because I thought it happened. It's not my thought that created it. So why does it happen? And that opens your brain, to all the esoteric world, to the world of premonition, of hunches, of intuition, I am receiving a message from somebody for some reason. And this I like. And basically, in front of the Bostrom hypothesis, I am sort of a detective. I am constantly looking for glitches. I am constantly looking for synchronicities because I think that they carry a message that is sort of the door out of the simulation.
Yeah. And yes, yeah.
You follow me?
I follow you. And many people have made that argument, and it's intuitively it's interesting, and you can think the same thing about things like tarot and astrology, where there are maybe those are real clues there within those fields or to something about the way the universe is constructed, and maybe there
Yeah,
are
the mean
maybe
is
there are
hungry.
maybe there are links or ways to I don't know, interface with the base code, if you will, to learn things that maybe are known that we wouldn't be able to learn in a normal way. So I don't know. I'm putting that poorly, but the Celestine Prophecy is a great example. That book series, very popular. That's all based on the idea of coincidences and the meaningfulness of them. Now that book does not talk about the simulation hypothesis. That's pre-computer era, but still interesting thing to think about.
It's projection of our meaning from our consciousness onto things that apparently are not connected. Fair enough, but that's a projection. And I really do go back to a concretist kind of point of view of I am breathing, that's why I'm alive. My cells are doing their things, my microbiome is doing its thing, all my little parasites are doing their things. And
Yeah, yeah.
we may be, someone said once, and I'm going to probably hate myself for saying this because I'm going to get myself down another rabbit hole, that we might just be smart housing for bacteria.
Yep. And that's very true. From a pure numbers perspective, we
And
are
all of
basically
this,
meaningless
all of
compared
this
to the microbes.
consciousness stuff is just for my entertainment, right? To keep me
Yes.
entertained so I
Why
can
they
keep
feed off you.
going long enough to keep my bacteria going,
It's
which,
right. Yeah. And it's interesting to think about the simulation hypothesis from a microbe's perspective, because
uh-huh.
okay, you say to yourself, why create all these microorganisms, and why do all that work for a
Why?
simulation? If you're going to do a simulation, okay, I get that, of an advanced being with consciousness,
The
that would you want
computing
to simulate
power.
yourself? But why then do all this other crap on top of it? That would just add more computing power necessity, like the microbiome and having all these microorganisms and infectious diseases, all these things that why would you question in your mind if you're writing a simulation? Video games don't have microbiomes associated with their characters, I don't believe, right? I think, and it's not because the computing power is not there. They probably could, or at least something approaching that. But it's why waste the computing power when you can have more guns or something? You can have or whatever they want to have in a video game.
And
If you think
Edwin
about
has
it,
brought in something also. Does this mean that the idea of manifesting the things you want in life is absolute BS? Is a rhetorical question, he says, but I don't think it's a
well,
rhetorical question. Is it or isn't it? And that was something
it
Nate
is BS.
Blind
It is.
Stonecutter was bringing
According
up.
It is.
according to you, Hal, if everything is a projection, yeah, then it's a waste of time.
Maybe a projection.
I mean, I think it is BS. You cannot manifest the things you want. However, saying that does not mean that you can't that trying to achieve the things you want to achieve and thinking about them is the only way to actually make them manifest. But that alone, just thinking about them, is not going to do anything for you. You have to
Yeah,
take
I was
some
watching a
action.
video on this with
Some
our
action
good
has
old
to.
friends Joe Dispenza and Bob Proctor. Those guys from The Secret. Um, I
I
was
don't know them
watching a
actually.
little thing on the manifesting how thoughts become things was actually
Yes,
the
how thoughts
title of
become
it.
things. Yes, I mean
Yeah.
it is a requirement to think about something that you want to happen for it to happen, but it is not alone. It's necessary but not sufficient condition for a thing to happen. To
And
just
things
think
do
about it,
happen that I don't think about.
and that also does happen as well. Yes, but yeah, if I could manifest my life, I probably would not be sitting here talking to you two guys right now. No, just kidding. I'm sure I would. I'm
Well,
sure I would.
it's in the program. You can't
You're right.
not talk about it.
Yes.
The simulation programmed you both with
Yes.
unlimited levels of irony, yeah?
That's
My,
right. Unlimited. Right.
and
That's right.
cynicism, my goodness.
Yes.
We
And
should call it the,
skepticism.
we should call it the cynical podcast instead of the
All
virtual
right. Yeah,
podcast.
you're right.
I
Good point.
wonder what's virtuous about it. Why did we choose that title again?
Because we're seeking truth, guys.
Oh, we're
We're not
seeking
shying
truth.
away. We're not shying away from the idea of going for the deep questions and trying to figure out answers, and not just saying, "Oh, there's no truth. It's all
And also,
relative."
Also
or
because
whatever.
being virtuous is a practice, and it is a
Correct.
practice that requires repetition and the supervision of friends that point you out and tell you that is better than that.
And a
Yes, correct.
discipline.
Yes,
The Aristotelian concept of ethics. That's why we
yes,
call it virtuous.
yes.
Although we have
You're right.
many
It
names
is.
for this podcast.
That's right. That's
I
right.
like that one. And
I do
I
too.
loved my little promotional piece. I hope you all did too. Of it's time to turn on the virtues virtue signal.
Right?
I didn't see it. I didn't see that. Did that come up just
It
before
was
the?
like a
I didn't see it.
spotlight. It was just a little meme that
But
said,
before when did it come out? Just this morning, or
no,
did you put out
this week. I mean, it was a couple of
this week?
days
Did I
ago
miss
that
it?
I found it.
Shoot, maybe I missed it.
But I
I'll
saw
look.
these people said, "Quick to the virtue signal." I was like, "Oh, that's cute. We could use that."
I like that. I do like
But
that.
we're not trying to virtue signal here because
Yeah, we're
obviously
not
none of
right.
us are very virtuous.
That's right. We're not, and this is not about other people telling other people how to be virtuous. Doesn't get
No,
don't get
it's
us wrong. I
definitely
don't.
not that.
Yeah,
It's
we're not
probably the
preaching
antitheses.
that.
Yeah,
We're
and,
we're trying to be
the
more
thing is,
virtuous.
we're very privileged people. Bruno's
Yes.
over there in Italy. He's getting a chance to be a hermit. What a luxury with his
What
cats.
a
Yeah.
You-
Concerning the question of Edwin, for example, let's move this a little forward. Concerning the question of Edwin, I not only am I sort of a detective
Uh-huh.
looking for glitches, because I disagree with you. Sometimes it is a projection. Sometimes one says, "Oh, this and this and this are connected causally," and it is me that is bringing an esoteric meaning to something that is actually just a coincidence among us. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it really happens acausal. We've spoken in previous podcasts, for example, and the only way, one of the good ways in which we can figure out what is causal and what is not causal, meaning what is inside the simulation and what is not inside the simulation, is to talk about it with your fellow humans, like us, And for example, an experience that I constantly have, there's two experiences that I constantly have. One is that even as I am talking with you two now, suddenly I get the mental picture or the image or the voice or something about an old friend, okay? Somebody that I haven't contacted in a long time. And in the next 24 hours, I will receive a phone call from that person. This happens to me all the time. And the more I talk about this with other people, the more it happens. And also, I went to read the text of Rupert Sheldrake, and Sheldrake has written a book about this, about telephone telepathy, which is that somehow we can call each other, and in a matter of hours, we will eventually enter in contact with the other. Okay, that's a typical one. The other typical one is that I'm sure that you've had it, and I'm sure that some other people have had it, is when you are in a public situation, you're in a park, you're in a plaza, whatever, or you're in your home, and you suddenly get a cold shiver in your back, like you get a shiver, so you get a weird feeling. You get the feeling that somebody's looking at you. And you turn around and exactly, somebody's looking at you. Somebody you don't know, or your cat or your dog. And somehow the eyesight of a person that is not looking you in the eye suddenly gives you this shiver, okay? So these are two experiences. We can talk about many more. Sheldrake has written endless experiments about this. Sheldrake is an empiricist, so he has collected like 3,000 different cases of this kind of acausal experiences that end up being causal, but that in the moment that they happen, they bring to you a meaning, they bring to you an experience that seems to come from somewhere else. Another experience that we talked about is the people that have tried using ayahuasca or DMT, and they all mention this reference to the appearance of these little sneaky elves that come and play with you and make fun of you, and in the end they teach you how what you want to see you can see. They are trying to teach you a faculty, which is that if you want to see something physically, you can see it physically, and therefore the whole visual universe is a construction of your brain, which is one of the great experiences that anyone that takes ayahuasca comes back with. When you come back from ayahuasca, you have the feeling that all this visualness is fake, that it is a simulation, actually. Okay, I mentioned these cases because not everything is a projection. There are some experiences in our human development, dear Hal, that are not causal, at least not immediately.
Okay, I can certainly see that you could take that perspective, and I can take the other perspective as well. And I don't know, I don't pretend knowledge of one thing being right and one thing being wrong. I'm saying maybe all the time to these things. Maybe everything's a projection of my consciousness. maybe the out picturing of the world, as the inner state. And I've had that experience. I don't know if you all have, when I'm in a mood and it just starts to pour rain. And it's like, this is obviously an out picturing of my inner condition. Of course, it's raining on everybody and not just me. So maybe I ought to be careful about the way I think. So I'm always interested in this perspective, but I have my doubts about it. And I like Robert Anton Wilson's statement along these lines, which is simply, I don't know anything for sure, or I'm not really certain of anything, but I have many suspicions. And I like to keep myself suspicious about reality and the people in it, and
Okay,
whether or not,
I think Bruno's onto something there. I think that you're right. There are some things that acausal type experiences that are interesting and they should be investigated more. But the problem I have is people extrapolating from that to these theories or hypotheses or these ways of life or these philosophies whereby if I just think hard enough about being rich, I will be rich. I don't have to do anything. I just sit there, I sit in my computer and I think
check
about
is
it
in the
and I
mail.
manifest.
Check is
I
in the mail.
manifest, I manifested my gorgeous girlfriend appearing, and there she is. She shows up at my door, and I just can sit on my ass and do nothing. And that's
That's
the
the real
only problem.
problem.
That's the
Okay,
only
but
problem I have with these.
okay. But let's go back to the question of Edwin Canesalis and about Hal, which is Hal. We all have this problem that sometimes we're overwhelmed by an emotion that doesn't allow us to think clearly, and we feel out of control. And we all not we
Never
all, but
happens to me.
we huh?
It never happens to me. Go ahead.
It never happens to you. I
I'm
thought
just
that.
teasing you.
He's being
Go ahead.
ironic. He's being facetious.
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Don't
Sorry.
abuse of my Asperger, please.
You have Asperger's. I didn't know that. I didn't know you had Asperger's, Bruno. That's a new one.
My mother used to think that
What
was,
is a joke?
I know.
there's
Can
actually
somebody explain me what is a
That was
joke?
a good joke.
stop.
Asperger's.
I might go someplace I don't mean to go. So anyway, you were saying that we can have
Yes,
these
I was saying,
overwhelming experiences.
I want to go through you and get to the question of Edwin, which is mindfulness or breathing. I mean, me personally, and I think all of us, when we are in an emotional stress, and we suddenly say we cannot solve a problem unless we change our mood, and then we go into, for example, a breathing technique, yoga or sitting down or mindfulness, concentrating on how the air comes into the nose and goes out of the mouth or the other way around, and suddenly you notice that if you focus on the flow of air, you can modify your mood. Okay. Is that causal or not? First question. Second question, if it is causal, then it means that we can, with the body, produce changes in the atmosphere, but starting with our own mood, because we can breathe, we can get calm, and then we can solve the problem, and then we can do magic, which would be going to the Edwin Canizares question, like if I do this certain dance, then I will make rain. Let's try. And I will try the dance, and suddenly if I dance, it rains. And if I don't dance, it doesn't rain, okay? And this is actually the origin of when we go from the myth to the ritual, and when we go from the ritual to the magic. So, to answer Edwin, I don't think it's bullshit to attempt these things, because I think all these attempts, it's not only about observing whether we are in a simulation, but it is also looking for the way out of the simulation and also exercising magic. So you say it in a fun way, like, oh, I want to be rich, so tomorrow I will be rich. Well, the question of free will is based on this, which is everything predetermined, or can you affect your own future, and how do you do it? And perhaps you can get rich if you breathe normally.
Right, that's right. That's like, hey, I wish that hasn't worked so far. It's not worked so far, so I'll try something else. But it's an excuse for the problem is it's an excuse for laziness for some people. Is the problem with it, and it's taken too far. And you're absolutely right, Bruno. You make very good points, and everybody's right here, of course. But it's just it's the taking it too far. And I get where Edwin is coming from, because if you look at the popular, the popular culture, the way people are talking about manifestation is not like Bruno's talking about it. They're talking about it like what I'm saying. If you just think hard enough, you'll become rich. If you believe enough, you can change the world to make it exactly how you want it.
True.
And yet, with the idea being, you don't have to do anything. Right? You don't have to do anything. Yes, you can't have doubt. You can't question.
Screw it up.
You're right, and so that's a
This is
philosophy
along
too.
the lines of the original momentum versus truth.
Yes, and it comes back to that. Yeah, it's going to be very dangerous.
Right back to
very
that.
dangerous.
And Edwin goes, I can't pronounce his last name. But Edwin and I had nice
Canizales.
Canizales.
Did you guys meet yet in person? Did he come down to your place?
We
or
talked
how?
one-on-one. We haven't met in physical
Okay.
person.
I see.
We
I
did
see.
talk on the phone. I just wonder if we confuse vision and self-determined with manifestation, self-determination with manifestation.
You know who has the answer to that question of Edwin Canizales? A poet, an American poet, Ralph Waldo Emerson, has the answer to that question.
He'll like that. He's a poet himself. Which poem are you referring to? A specific poem?
It's actually an essay, but it's a very poetic essay. The essay is called Nature.
Okay.
Nature.
There you go, Edwin. Edwin probably knows it, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So Edwin, I'll write it for you.
Yep.
Another one that has an answer is Robert Anton Wilson, and another one that has an answer is British poet William Blake.
There you go.
The reality tunnels that we're looking at the world through are very different from one another. That's what we're trying to do, is merge our reality tunnels from Tijuana in Italy to Washington, D.C., to get a little bit perspective on this stuff of what it means to exist in the world and what it means to be a virtuous person. We don't claim virtue, like we said, but hey, Nature
we are
by Robert.
we are trying to achieve. We view it. I think the idea is we agree that it's good. Agree it's a good thing that we should be striving towards, even if we aren't ourselves obviously ideal examples of it. At least we try, and we want to be examples of it if we
Right,
can.
and there are those who don't want to be, apparently. There's an awful lot of greed and self-centeredness and self-interest in general. Self-interest in a bad way.
Yes,
and I think
in a bad
that's
way.
what's really driving things. When I'm at the counter, shelling out the crawlers and the coffee and stuff, I'm noticing that people love to be made number one. I've got a stack of numbers and I'm giving them out. And when I can give the one to somebody, they always feel really happy about that. And I'm really distressed at the same time when I see it, because it's telling. All of us want to be like the most important thing in the universe. And to ourselves, we are, but we are one hive of critters all scattered around this globe, really making a mess of things a lot of the time. Now, we're doing better in some view. For instance, the ozone layer. We got rid of CFCs, right? Pretty much, and the ozone layer is being rehabilitated as a result. Once we realized that DDT, we stopped using that when we realized that eggshells are getting broken. We've got to get really smarter on all the fronts, though. I mean, the glycophosphate, for instance, Roundup, horrible stuff. So chemicals, that's really Dan's territory more than Bruno and mine. I don't think you're a chemist, are you, Bruno?
I'm not a chemist either, but I know about
I am an alchemist. Does it count?
It's right. He's an alchemist. That's right. He's an alchemist. Yeah, that counts. It does. It does actually.
I like the way you frame it now, Hal. I'm constantly quarreling with your cynicism, but because it's funny. But
I don't think I'm a cynic.
You're funny, but yeah, you are. But then
but that wasn't it.
I'm a contrarian.
That wasn't
it. But excuse me, a moment of history. The cynic school is not being cynic like we say. We usually say cynic like a person who doesn't mean what he says and who's mocking you. That's not the meaning of cynicism. Cynicism comes from Dionysius of Sinope, this guy that lived in a barrel and that
we talked about that just the other day.
He lived in a barrel.
We talked about that the other day. And
he carried a lantern looking for an honest man.
Exactly. Yeah. His only quest in life was to look for an honest man, and he didn't need anything. He didn't need clothing or food. He lived in a barrel. And Alexander the Great thought that this guy probably had the answer as to how to win all the wars. So he went to see Dionysus and he said, I want to talk to you. And Dionysus looked at Alexander the Great and he said, can you scoot a little bit because you're covering the sun and I want some sunlight. That is the essence of cynicism, So it is a compliment to you, Hal.
Well, but I don't think
you're like Alexander the Great. You're like Alexander the Great.
I like to take the opposite tack because we collectively need to question ourselves.
Yes.
If we believe anything really strongly, we should step outside ourselves and say, why do we believe that?
Yeah, and the stronger you believe
something.
Yes,
and this is what I like about your focus now, because I think that besides the mathematical discussion about the simulation hypothesis, which in my own case, what I do is I am on the constant lookout for hunches, tips, synchronicities, coincidences, and also I am trying to do magic. I'm trying to do things to see if this modifies the simulation or breaks the simulation. So, another way to confront this hypothesis that we cannot get rid of, is the political one, which is do we want to make changes in the world or not, or do we want to go with the flow, whatever happens, and that is a very personal question. It's a very political question. And you have to understand that when Dionysius made that joke to Alexander the Great, it was a political joke. He was telling him, you're looking for truth, and truth is already there. Okay, you just need the sun. You just need to pay attention. Okay,
does that really happen, or is that a story? Is that a story that's been told? I mean, through the ages there. Does that really meant?
It is a historical story. So yes, it happened.
Okay.
And Dionysius is called the father of the Cynics, and it gave way to a philosophical movement called the Cynics. So yeah, it happened. There is a tradition about this. Now, anyway, going back to the political thing, you have said it many times. It's true that we're just a little gush of light that happens on 1 second, and then we die. And so the level of influence that we have on the simulation can be really low. But at the same time, is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. It actually gives your life meaning, to make an attempt, to make a change. It's all this, all your other archival side. Why would you collect all these documents from your father and your grandfather if it wasn't for a political objective, which is to leave it for somebody else, to continue writing the story, to continue solving the problem.
Right. We can't have an accurate simulation without accurate history, right, Hal?
I don't think accurate history is possible, personally. I don't think any of our perceptions are ever, the whole picture.
Yeah.
We're all getting little glimmers.
It's an interesting question about if we are in a simulation. What is history then? If everything is simulated, what does that actually mean? What does the past actually mean if you're living inside of a simulation? Time is simulated, therefore. So you could argue that there is no history, there is no past, actually, in a sense, any sense, real sense of the word.
Yeah, the idea of the Akashic fields would say that everything is recorded and it all exists simultaneously.
Yeah. Now, I actually don't know in computing, is there a historical record? I guess there's memory, right, in a computer. So there is stuff is cached in memory. So I guess if you
extend that, can be lost. Actually, that's one of the big problems we have with electronic media is that all this could be lost if there were suddenly blackouts of. Electromagnetic pulses could do it.
10 more stories for me just occurred in my head that I haven't considered about the simulation hypothesis, because the past is a very interesting topic, actually, to think about from that perspective of what to make of the past.
I am, as you well know, I am a huge defender of intersubjectivity. I value enormously that we three get together and talk because, the simulation hypothesis works better if we're all divided, if everyone is his little world, okay? But if we talk, if we share, if we discuss, if we argue, then the simulation hypothesis begins to crumble, okay? Because then we can confirm whether your story is equivalent to my story. This is also the way history is written. History is written because many people observed a historical fact with similar characteristics, and therefore the collection of the similar characteristics as written by different people gave way to the constitution of a historical fact, you see?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to talk. Now, the problem that we're facing now, I would say, is that one effect that technology is having is that technology is dividing us. Technology is splitting us. Technology is pushing us, each one of us, into his own brain to solve the problem. And that sort of strengthens the simulation hypothesis. And I'm totally against it. I think it's super important to talk, to write, to share thoughts, to talk to the people that are here online with us, to argue between us, because this is also a way in which we're doing some kind of political action.
Some kind of what had happened to Dan?
Sorry, guys, I had to get a charger.
The simulation hypothesis. Convinced him to go away.
So you're reading about Diogenes.
I just zapped away.
He disappears.
Sorry. I had to get a charger for my computer so I didn't die like last time where I lost all of it.
I don't want it to die.
Yeah.
My other not counter argument, my other criticism to the simulation hypothesis is that the whole Bostrom thing is based on this idea of a supercomputing power that creates the simulation.
Yes.
Right.
And my question about it is, why do we need all this computing power when if it is the case that we have telepathy, then we're already connected with each other. Not only do we solve the problem of not being alone, we already can talk to each other whenever we want, and we don't need all this computing power to provide us all the possibilities. Why has artificial intelligence become this sort of interface? Like we need to go through artificial intelligence to talk to each other. I disagree. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, we can use Substack, and we can use microphones, and we can use some technological devices to connect to each other, particularly if we're not on the same city. But we can also attempt to connect with each other without any technological device, and therefore the simulation hypothesis has this, this
hearing
myth.
an experiment being laid out.
It is very let's say computer centric, obviously, as is a society today. So yeah, and that's only one way of looking at how things evolve in the future, for sure.
But I don't want to miss this. I think Bruno's providing us with a schematic for an experiment we can do where we can actually use telepathy. Was like, am I on to you?
Yes. Bruno and I talk all the time.
We can
talk all the time.
talking here. We can start talking telepathically. Then we can report out next week on the results.
Yes, let's do
you're
it.
trying to send signals into my brain.
I am constantly doing this experiment with you too, particularly because of the time change, because when you guys write to me at 4 or 5 o'clock, and to me it's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. So I am constantly getting WhatsApps from you at 3 a.m. in the morning, from both of you, okay?
I figured.
And it's very funny because you wake me up from my dream, and I have to connect with whatever you are. And obviously, you both write to me very complicated stuff, the things that came to your mind that you want to talk about. And I find it very funny, that at times, as you have noticed, I reply to you as if I was awake, as if I was
I
having
feel
dinner. Like, oh hi, it's 3 a.m. Let's talk about the Bostrom and the simulation hypothesis.
Yeah, right.
So
I do think about that occasionally.
You guys are forcing me into telepathy, even if I don't want to. I have to be connected to you while I'm sleeping. You're provoking sleep deprivation, but telepathy development.
Yes, I hear. I see. I need to think about that more. So I do want to say you're right. I think you're right. I think the simulation hypothesis is a very poor. It is not an accurate description of the universe and ourselves within it. I do not believe for a moment. I talked about it's too good to be true from a hypothesis perspective, because it can explain anything. You can explain absolutely the way anything works, or anything why it's the way it is by an appeal to it, which makes it to me way too. And that, of course, most religions you can do the same thing. Or most gods, at least. If you could always say, well, God wanted it that way, and I am nervous, and I don't typically believe hypotheses, or I don't think that they have a lot of strength if they have that kind of where they can explain anything, and this one can. And so so it's to me that's grounds for rejection of it as being accurate right there, without significant evidence in favor of it, which there is none, no experimental evidence at least. So to me, it's a very low, not an accurate, but I still think it's fascinating to think about. I love talking about it.
I think it's a provocative hypothesis, because it cannot be proven wrong. But what I don't like about this hypothesis is that this hypothesis pushes us into apolitical activity. It pushes us into not doing anything. It pushes us into saying, well, everything is done for, everything is programmed. It's all a simulation, so there's no point in trying to change things. And this is what I find a little bit dangerous about this hypothesis, but at the same time provocative, because it makes me think, okay, if this is a simulation, then let's break it. Let's crack it.
Let's get out of it. If it's a trap, let's get out.
With it.
That's the other way to think about it.
Wrench.
Try to get out of it, and I agree. And that's why I wrote this article about traps. If you know you're in a trap, I think it motivates you to want to get out, and you're going to try things that you can try to get out of it. So if we are in a trap of a simulation, then I'm all for busting out.
I mean, the broader problem of suicide is brought to mind here, because people do try to escape the trap by killing themselves, and it's a damn shame that we don't appreciate always the extreme unlikelihood of us existing at all. And you get to exist and then you take yourself out. I've thought of it. I mean, I think we all have.
Many at a time in the world that was considered a thing to do. I don't know if you guys remember. You don't remember. You obviously weren't alive, but there was a period of time in history where suicide was considered a thing to do. Like it was cool to commit suicide, if you will.
Goethe. I mean, that book by Goethe, set off a lot of people doing copycat suicides all over Europe.
It can be a poetic act on its own, and it can provide meaning. And I've had I like that you touched this subject, because we can introduce a little bit the next subject for the next podcast. But
Yeah.
I've had in the last month, I've had 3 friends that have committed suicide, and of course,
Wow.
it's a lot,
Yeah,
and it
it
has
is.
very different people also from different places and for different reasons and different ages. But all the 3 stories have been very dramatic, and of course, it has pushed me to a reflection about why does it happen? What happened with these people? Were they too alone? Was I not there when I should have been there, or did they really think that this was the way out? And the way out of what? The simulation became overburdening. I thought
Yeah.
that because you can always be red pilled inside the simulation, you can enjoy it, but it seems that the simulation, for some reason, when we feel that we are trapped, we immediately think that it is not joyful, that we actually have to come out of the trap. And that is a very interesting instinct of us, It's a very interesting and potent animal instinct. We fight for our freedom. We want to ensure our freedom. It is one of the major characteristics of you Americans. You talk about it all the
Freedom
time.
250, baby.
Yeah, well, yeah. A lot of talk. Yeah, yeah.
We just had a Grand Prix here last weekend, by the way. Freedom 250 Grand Prix.
Nice.
I didn't see it. Did you all see it?
I did not know.
Yes, I did.
You did see it.
How can you avoid it? But
I avoided it just fine. And I live here. Lynn and I went up north. We went up to Rockville.
I study too many things, and I am an obsessive collector of useless trivia. So
I was
That's right.
actually working too during the race, I think. But yeah, it is kind of useless to run around the tracks and burn all this fuel. It's just like, why are we doing that? But
Be number one, like you said, Hal. You want to be number one?
yeah, people like being number one. They really do.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. People are very competitive.
I like being the center of their own universe, but most people think they're powerless too at the same time.
Yeah.
Dan had a really good essay on powerlessness and power. We have power.
Yeah.
And we can use our power.
That'd be another good topic to talk about too, along with suicide. I like both of those as topics, because there's a lot to talk about for both. Because I think, and suicide's a good one too, because there's tons to unpack there about why people do it.
So look forward to our talk on suicide next week.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Get ready for a real uplifter. That's gonna be.
We can. But I want to, we have a request.
Can we laugh our way through it?
We have a request from one of our followers.
Oh, we do. Which is okay. Which is
it's a woman that is called Nate, that is a jeweler, and she two podcasts ago she talked about the subject of manifestation.
Yes.
Right.
Which I like it because it is actually quite opposite to the simulation hypothesis, which is what if you want to produce some kind of magic, for example, summon a ghost or summon a demon or request.
So that kind of so you're talking about manifestation of entities, not manifestation of things in your life. You're talking. This is a different kind of manifestation, not like what Edwin was talking about earlier.
I'm talking exactly the same thing that Edwin is talking about. Yeah,
okay.
What are you showing? Your telephone. A ghost.
This is my phone case. It's The Death
Yeah.
of the Miser by Hieronymus Bosch.
I like Bosch.
And I like that because you got a miser. You can't take it with you. Death is coming for us all.
No, to put the question in the language of Edwin and also in the language of Nate,
Yep.
and not to lose the thread of simulation. The question would be like, do you really want to break the simulation? Do you want the blue pill? Do you really want to break the simulation? So prepare for what you might find, because what you might find might be beyond what you're capable of understanding. She explained manifestation as a warning, actually, How far are you willing to practice magic? How far are you willing to attempt something out of the rules? How far are you willing to attempt something acausal that becomes causal? And I sort of like her warning because she reminded me of the difference between white magic and black magic and yellow magic. She reminded me of Aleister Crowley, when you, instead of doubting whether you can change the world or not, is when you situate yourself as a magician or an alchemist and you say, yeah, I can change the world. So what do I do? Because there are some things that I can do that are very positive, and there are some things that I can do that are very negative, and that can actually bring forth destruction, death, suicide.
Yeah.
And there is the law of unintended consequences. Just because I do well doesn't mean that it doesn't have negative consequences down the road.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that's really an important one to consider as we go about our daily business.
Yes.
I try to do as little as possible so that I'm not a bad influence.
You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry
Justifies
about
an
any bad.
action.
Right, then you have to worry about any bad influence. That's a good point. That's a good philosophy there. That's why I don't do anything. You
It's
never
the
know.
second Murphy's law. If something can go wrong, it will, and
Yes.
that's the first. And the
And
Therefore,
second
I
there
one,
do nothing.
there are sins of commission, there are sins of omission. We
Right.
can think about that as well, I think. But
That's
I
a good
don't
one.
know. My main thing is I don't know. I just am curious and I want to know what the smartest men on the planet have to say about it. So I got
There
you.
are evil people. There are evil people out there for sure, and I think today there is real evil out there. This is one of these things where I would say, no, I would used to be Mr. Scientist when I was a kid, if you will, and I was. There's no such thing as evil. This is made up. This is kids just stories, this and that. But I've come to change my opinion on that in a big way. And there is definitely evil out there. There are real evil, and there are real evil people, and I absolutely believe it, and I think in fact I know it.
yes,
And
and these evil people are manifesting, are doing things on purpose without accepting any kind of accountability for the consequences of their actions, and some things go even worse than what they expected. At times, I feel that we're now in a period in which we're at the hands of people that are manifesting a lot of evil things.
I agree. We are.
Well, it's psychopathic, certainly, and sociopathic.
Yes, yes.
It's sickness in
It's,
society,
it's
right?
a
And the
sickness.
sickness comes, I believe, out of being traumatized primates.
Well,
Although,
and
although,
not not
although,
not
although
the
when you
Virtuous podcast.
although when you listen to Peter Thiel or to Elon Musk, they are convinced that they're doing the right thing.
And you're actually right.
Absolutely.
They are. And they are.
They
And
are
they're
very
also
much convinced of it, and they make
and,
convincing arguments sometimes too to some people.
but
And
you hear them saying things like, Elon Musk has said we're summoning the demon. He said that, he said those exact words, 10 years ago or whatever, 15 years ago in a talk, and he uses words like that a lot about demons, demonology. We're summoning demons. They call things demon. They name things after demons, after ancient Babylonian
well, yeah,
gods that
and
of,
there's
of evil.
psychologists
So
believe very
the whole
strongly in
thing
the
is
demonic possession
So,
it's just
implications.
so what does that mean? That they are black magicians and we need white
I
magicians?
I don't know what it means, but it's scary to me. I mean, it's not a good thing, whatever it means. It's not, and because they have a lot of power, these people that are saying things like this in a serious fashion, and so that scares me in
And
many
they're
ways.
listened to by a lot of people,
And they are, and
as
many people
opposed to the
don't find it
viewers to the
scary.
Virtuous podcasts who are few.
That's right. That's always the way it is, isn't it?
You can get the real truth here, folks.
That's
That's
of
what
course you
we're
can.
after.
Of course you can.
I,
No
I,
demons
I
allowed.
I'm not
For hell.
laughing.
what worries me is this powerlessness argument, so well written by Hannah Arendt, which is this feeling, that
Reality.
power is always evil. There's no good
Yeah.
power. Huh?
It is. Isn't
And
that
there's
weird?
power
Yeah.
is evil, and therefore
Yes.
people that are good are powerless, and people that are
Yeah.
bad are powerful. I am not convinced by that,
I agree. That's not always the case. You're
but
right.
but I tend but I tend to feel that it is like that.
Yes, it sure does seem that way. Right
Well,
now, it sure feels like that way. It
we
feels that way.
certainly have corporatism in action, as Bruno and I were talking about solo the other day. It
Yeah.
was it's
But it's like,
galling to me in some ways that I'm a participant in it all.
yeah,
And I see myself as being largely responsible for the world that has been manifested since I arrived. But that's pretty maniacal,
yeah.
megalomaniacal of me
Megalomaniacal.
to say that. However, one can take these perspectives, and then when one does take this perspective that you are responsible, maybe we can try to do better collectively. That's my idea, and hopefully it's inspiring to others who are listening to us, and they'll
Yeah.
jump in and get involved. I see some people joining who I've seen before. Paul Kay, Aaron Gaffney's here now. Sam is here, and if anybody has any last
So
questions, I think we're about to wrap
I,
up, right,
I
guys?
just want to
We're
say my
almost
question. This is a great
90
great
minutes.
point you make, Bruno. You made a very good point about power and evil, and I was having a conversation with a friend on Substack actually about this, and talking about rich people and why are there no good. Where's the Batmans of the world? Where's the Bruce Waynes,
Yes,
the ultra rich like do-gooders? It's like you don't see them now. Maybe they're out there, but you don't see them. You think to yourself, oh, Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, but my understanding of Gates is he's not. None of these guys are like really great people. You don't hear like
Yeah.
this guy's just a fantastic person. Everybody loves him, and he's always doing good. And you'd never hear that. So why is that the case? That the ultra rich are never good do-gooders, right? Or, they're always do-evilers. So,
That's a great topic.
and why? Yeah, it's a great time. Why is that the case? Is that the only way to get money? Is to be a dick? I mean, I don't get it.
And Dick is
Post-
Dick is being generous. I mean,
right. I mean, that's very generous, extremely generous, right? That's like the best case.
they're
The best case.
genocidal. They're
Right.
genocidal.
Or right. Like the more shitty you are, the more money you get. So why? What the fuck? What is the deal? It doesn't speak very highly of money, if that's the case, right? I mean, what makes you think money really sucks is a value of a bringer of value, right? A holder of value. If the people that have the most of it are the worst people, why should money be the thing people want? Right? It's like completely antithetical. So, but people want money, of course, more than anything. But anyway,
Is there a way to have power without money?
and also, yeah, right. Is there? If there is, sort of. I mean, sort of, but
Well,
in today's
let's
world,
take a look at Gandhi, for instance. I'm not
yeah,
sure
you
what
can
his
have.
net worth was.
Right. Well, that's a good point. There are exceptions, but in most cases, it's
His
hard.
net
It's
worth
hard.
might have been very high, mind you. I don't know.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know either. I
I
don't know
think I
either.
would look it up and see if
Yeah.
we can figure it out.
Yeah.
So Gandhi springs to mind in his little, homespun going to the
Yeah.
March to the Sea. I've got a little statue of him down here,
Yeah.
and that such a man even
But I mean,
existed.
of course, historically
Russia.
there had like Jesus did not have the money, right? Of course, your historical
If he
prophets and
was historically
disciples.
existent, we could go
Yes,
into that too. Maybe
yeah,
he didn't actually exist.
many of these historical figures that were poor, or that were very, very influential. So I don't know. And it used to be being moneyless or poor was as virtue, and now that's sort of a cynical view. And that's why how the rich people make poor people think it's okay. Well, it's virtuous to be poor. It's it's a good thing,
Well,
that
certainly,
kind of thing.
Christopher Hitchens thought that Mother Teresa had deliberately kept people poor in her Little Sisters of the Poor,
Yeah.
and
Wow.
had some interesting things to say about Mother Teresa. I am not sure. I have
Yeah.
my suspicions, but I do believe I'd like to have money. I think I'd be just darling at being able.
Everybody would, but it's just like it's like almost like a relationship. Just like one of my
That was
hypotheses,
Dorothy Parker, by the way.
direct relationship between shittiness and money. Like people's shittiness and how much money they have. It's just like you can graph it, and it would be like a straight line.
Well, of course, Dolly Parton had a lot of money too, and did some good things with it.
Yeah.
Apparently, so
Yeah.
we can look at that
That's true
example.
too.
And who else? I don't know
So
how.
many rich people had done really
Curry
good
was.
things, of course. Tons have,
The,
of
the,
course.
the only I mean, it's good that you touch Dolly, yeah, because what I find, this is a tendency that, in my point of view, 20 years ago it wasn't like it is today, which is a bad person is more believable than a good person. And when you find a good person, immediately everyone begins criticizing him or her because of the bad
Yeah.
things that she's done. So even the good ones, we turn them evil, and you get a lot of gossip about. It's like,
Yeah.
if there's
Well, I'm
anyone
thinking
if
that
there's
of him.
anyone evil, if there's anyone evil, let's follow him. And if there's anyone bad, anyone good, let's talk bad about him, because he
Until
can't.
become evil.
There's
Yeah.
no good people. In the
Yeah.
case of
Yeah.
Dolly Parton, for example, less than 12 hours after she died, immediately there was this Substack debate about the fact that she donated $1 million for the creation of the Moderna vaccine, and therefore she was to be blamed for the anti-vaxxers suddenly took over the subject about Dolly Parton and began
missed that.
criticizing.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's
I'm
crazy.
really glad I missed it. But it
That's
depends on your
crazy.
reality tunnel, right? What you get exposed to as well. You got to be really careful what you consume.
But here's the thing about Dolly Parton. I also don't
You
like.
gotta be,
especially,
I mean, you can't control what you consume. The point that I'm making is, why is it so easy to criticize the good but follow the bad? This is what I can't understand.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
you want to
Why
take
are the
people
bad more
down.
believable?
Yeah, you do find, and also
Tallest daisy gets cut off, kind of thing.
and
So you don't want to be too good by Thursday, they say.
I think there's a jealousy component too when it comes to money, where people who don't have it are inherently perhaps jealous of those who do, and so to cut
Yeah, we
down,
have to watch out for
you want
those.
to cut down, you want to cut down people that you think are your betters, if you will.
Well, certainly I like to be. I'm sitting. I quite often get questions about my watch when I'm at work.
You do, okay?
Because
What is your watch there?
I'm wearing a Breitling Transocean chronograph
So
that
is
I
that an
got in
expensive
the
watch?
raffle,
Very
Is that an
posh.
expensive?
For
Is that an expensive watch?
people who really understand this, yeah, it is. People who
Okay.
really understand watches, they home in on it and they're like, okay, what's the deal here? You're working here, but you're wearing this fancy watch. What's up with that? I tell them
And
the
what it?
truth.
It's
And it
fake.
sets them at minds at ease a little bit that I'm not some ultra rich asshole.
I see. So what is the truth? So what is the story about? What is the story behind the watch?
Well, I got in a raffle, right, for the Rex
Ah.
Foundation
Oh, okay.
because I was attending the
So you won it.
East Coast edition of Wavy Gravy's birthday, his 80th, back in 2016. So I've had the watch since then. when I won the raffle. And I never buy a watch like this. It costs as much as a damn car.
Does it really? Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. So you want to?
it's
That's a nice
crazy.
raffle. It's a nice raffle then.
Yeah, it was a good raffle. Yeah, my
Very
wife won
nice.
a Hermes, but she immediately gave it away because it was yellow gold, and she doesn't like yellow gold.
Okay.
I loved, she didn't give it away. She gave it to a consignment store and got it.
So it was all
Got it.
watches. Everyone. There was only watches being given out for the prizes. Is that also a watch?
That was one of the things that were raffling. I
Wow.
think they raffled
Nice.
some other things too. I don't remember what they were because I didn't enter, but I entered
Yeah.
this one and boom, got it.
I've
But
never.
it supports the Rex Foundation, which is a charitable foundation that the Grateful Dead put together, which I think is kind of interesting. They did a Rainforest Coalition thing with the
So
UN. They had actually a thing at the UN with Bobby and Jerry up there and Mickey Hart, their drummer.
so
One
luck is another
and
interesting
what
phenomena.
was
We can talk
interesting
about
about
winning
that
a
was,
lottery.
sorry,
I said luck is another interesting phenomenon if you think from the perspective of the simulation
that's
hypothesis.
true.
What is
So
luck?
just to
And
finish with the Rainforest
yes,
Coalition, what
yes.
was funny was, and this is back in the 70s, early 80s, I guess it's in the 80s, they were doing a Madison Square Garden, benefit. They had sold it out, right, for this thing for the rainforest. And they were talking about the importance of the rainforest. And I love what Jerry Garcia said because he said, it's a real shame that it has to be us. you know, it's such a goofy thing to say as well. But it was talking about humility, right? They
Yeah.
wanted to put their good where it'll do the most. They had avoided doing anything political for the longest time, but finally they were moved to want to help the rainforest, as we
Okay.
all should. And by the way, we made some progress there, but we still got a lot of work to do to preserve the rainforests. So,
Yeah, and it's a
these
complicated
are
question.
types of actions where people can really get involved. We had a friend of mine die recently, cancer, and they didn't commit suicide. They actually just had cancer, and that killed them at an age of like younger than me. I think they were born in 65. And what I did was I planted some trees, and that was really easy to do through legacy.com. Whenever anybody dies, it's one of the things you can do. Plant trees.
The rainforest thing is interesting. When you live in a country like Mexico, you take it as a slightly different perspective. Saving the
Go ahead.
rainforest is a rich person's thing that people say, "Oh, I'm going to save the rainforest." For the indigenous on the ground, sometimes saving the rainforest means they don't get their farm or they don't get to live. So it's like it sounds great. I want to save the rainforest, but for the person who's living there who wants that land to do something with, and it's not just evil developers building houses for millionaires, multimillionaires. This is the middle of the jungle. Many times it's
It's
indigenous
got to be a
peoples who
balance.
want to farm. Yeah, so there has to be a balance. I think sometimes it's saving the rainforest goes a little too far. Not always, of course. And I know they're sensitive to that, but oftentimes they're not, and it's just like a bowl over. Sorry, we're going to save the rainforest, and we don't care about your indigenous people, even though that's theoretically that's why they're saving it, but in reality, it's hurting those same people they're trying to help. So, and I think there needs to be more understanding of that for people who are involved in the Save the
Yeah,
Rainforest
and
movement.
non-contacted tribes, actually, their whole lifestyles can be
Many of
destroyed.
those, yeah,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
But anyways, any event, it's more complicated than it makes it sound. It takes a very complex issue and makes it sound so simple, which many things do, of course. But there's
Yeah,
layers
of
of
course, the
complexity to
long
saving the
lecture by the
rainforest that
UN folks, did bring up a lot of the issues that
you know,
you're mentioning. I think that
nobody wants,
it's
and of course nobody
important.
wants to hear explanations. No one wants anything
Well,
complicated. Nobody wants to hear about it, as we've discussed many times. So forget about it. It's save the rainforest. Yeah, it's just easier.
we've got to educate ourselves, that's for sure, about the law of
Yeah.
unintended consequences, and that's
Well,
exactly what you're bringing up.
yeah, it's easy to say save the rainforest. Like my point, and like anything, you can say save this, save that, and then you actually on the ground when you get to the details of it, it's not as
Yeah,
simple as oftentimes is portrayed.
that's why we need artificial intelligence.
Right.
But it's so complicated for our little brains. We need our
Yes.
extended brain,
Yes,
but
that
we
can help
need.
us.
This example is what I'm talking. For example, this rainforest thing is like Dolly Parton, you see, which is whenever you see something that seems a little bit positive, your mind immediately begins skeptical,
Yes.
thinking why in the end this is not good. Okay.
Right. It's
Whereas,
actually
whereas,
not good.
whereas when we see something
Burn
that
the sucker down.
Yeah, right. Who needs a fucking rainforest? Get the chainsaws out. Where's my chainsaw? I'm
I
going down
and
there next week.
Murder those pimps, damn it.
Right.
I also got
Heathens.
stuck with this idea of Gandhi and humility, and this idea of can we accumulate power without money, which I think is a very good question to ask all the time. I wanted to ask you both, you Americans. You Americans? Do you remember in the month of June or July that there was a march of Buddhist monks that started in Texas and walked all the way to Washington?
I have film of them. Yeah,
I never
because
heard
I
of it.
was
I never
out
heard
there
of this.
with my camera.
You
I'm
saw
not in the
them.
United.
I went out there, and you can find it on Live
Can you
with Hal Gill.
Can you? I saw millions of videos about the experience of people watching the monks and the dog, Aloka, which is a character in himself.
Yeah, one of
The
those
dog,
monks lost his leg.
the dog with the white heart in his forehead. You know.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit how it was the experience of being near the monks and watching them pass by, and watching other Americans crying and thanking and giving them flowers. It was such
We
an
lined
incredible.
the streets, definitely, in DC, both when they passed by near on Sheridan Circle, right, where I was
Yes.
walking the other day, and then they came down by the Lincoln Memorial and Washington Monument. They were coming from the Capitol, and I saw them as they crossed 17th Street by the World War II Memorial. It was lovely. Big crowds, out to see it. I love that, but at the same time, I'm saying we really put a lot of focus on it, right? But were people really getting a message from it? Did it
What
really
was the message?
resonate to
I
the point
didn't.
of
What was it?
moving people
What
to
was it?
action?
What was the message? I didn't even hear about this. This is the first
The
I've heard
peace
of it.
walkers they walked from Texas all the way to Washington D.C., and it was during the Snowcrete event we had, where there was this piles of just solid icy snow everywhere, and they had a really rough walk because the weather was bad a good bit of the time. One of them got hit by a car, lost his leg, but he rejoined the
Jeez,
march. They had a
jeez,
dog accompanying them as well, as I
man.
mentioned.
How many were
Um,
there?
there were there were different levels of people were associated, but I think the core group was probably what between 20 and 50. I don't know
Yeah.
offhand, but you'll have to look up Peace Walkers, and it was
Okay, but
that's great.
excuse me. I want to insist on your perception of the moment because you had the chance to be there personally. You question whether
Well,
they were.
I loved all the people coming out and showing a lot of attention to them as they were going by. That's lovely. But then we immediately go home. The next spectacle, right?
You really
But
think that is what that is how you perceived it, huh?
I perceive all of us as having a very short attention span. I may be wrong. That's the way
yeah,
I perceive it, though, that we have a very short attention span. That kind of spectacular sacrifice by these monks to walk for peace has not created peace in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And that was probably the most public manifestation of anybody moving for peace around. But when it comes down to it, there's no real peace movement here. And
yeah,
that
yeah.
was just sort of like a spectacle.
What was the piece? What piece specifically about the specific war, the Iran
They
actions, or
did.
what was it?
Global
In
peace.
general, just
They
in general.
didn't have a political message, but they gave speeches on every town,
Mhm.
and their speech was profoundly Buddhist, and they were
Right.
basically saying, "Look, you have to start every day in the most peaceful manner. So the first thing you have to do every day is wake up, fix your bed, and say, today is going to be my peaceful day." And he repeated this message endlessly, and that was all the message, Dana. It was not more than that. He actually said, I don't have a political message. I don't want you to push you left or right. All I want to tell you is that the change, if we want a better change, if we want a change for the world, the change starts within us. And we have to start the day in the best way possible.
And I
Okay.
think just about everybody agrees with that. However, I think that as far as whether we all practice it, that's another matter. I don't know. My instance is that we are fat and happy. We are distracted by our entertainment industries. We are, in general, living that bread and circuses moment that ancient Rome was living in as it was crumbling.
Says it
Okay,
was
but
about finding peace within yourself to spread it worldwide. Is what Edwin says, and I
okay,
think Edwin pretty much nailed
I
it.
saw many interviews of people that were attending the talks or that were standing on the road giving them flowers, and there were a lot of testimonials. Okay,
Yeah.
and I saw many of them. I was very interested in the case. I thought, to me, it has been politically the most important action in the year in the United States. This is my point of view. More important than everything that has been done in the Congress, in the Senate, and whatever, you know. And what I found beautiful is that the majority of the Americans that would give a testimonial, they would say, I had something contained in me. I had an emotion that I couldn't release, that I couldn't get out. I had a sadness. I had a negative feeling. I had a terrible mood. And these monks passed by, and finally I could release it. I could let it go. And now I can think more positive. And I saw this many times from many Americans. And in my point of view, this is not very typical of the American temperament, you know, to be so emotional and to be so releasing, you know, about something that is contained. Like many of them
the
said,
emotional release may be true, but it's brief.
monks gave me a permission. That's what many people said. The monks have given me a permission that I didn't know I had.
Yeah, and maybe I can see where hell's coming from. That's fine, but the question is, what then? What then? What? And
Then
for
what?
most people, it's
Yeah.
right back to the
Then
same old. I had my release. Great, thanks. You know, now
I mean,
back to TV, back to watching TV.
It's like going to a festival. You get a lot of love and good vibes in the festival. I was just watching a thing about festivals, starting with the 1954 Newport Jazz Festival, I believe. Anyhow, this documentary was about the vibe that is created in these things and how it's really good for us as human beings to go to festivals and be one with everybody else, and to have that peak experience. And I guess that comes into my Colin Wilson stuff, the peak experience the outsider is looking for, right? And how we are all constantly looking for a lived experience and feeling that richness of being inside, that could open up from watching the peace walkers go by. Yes, I think that does happen. Keeping it open, that's the hard part. It needs to practice the discipline of continuing to be a peace walker, so to speak. I don't really call myself a peace walker. I think it would be kind of like pretentious, but I do film the passing show consistently. And it's very similar, right? It's my walk alone while narrating what I'm seeing, or, in your case, Bruno, you were with me on the walk for a good bit as we went by that Chilean ambassador's monument, where he was blown up on Sheridan Circle. One terrorist attack in Washington, D.C., I think you put it.
What year was that? What year was that attack? I missed
71,
that part
I
of the
think. Wasn't it 71, Bruno? I think it was.
September 21st, 1976.
76. Okay, sorry. I was 5 years off.
Well,
we are almost at the 2-hour mark, and my wife wants to take her out at 2 a.m.
I actually got to go. I didn't realize we were that far over. Gee whiz. Holy cow. Yeah, I got to go too, guys. But so we'll catch up next time.
Okay, so manifestation, and let's talk next Thursday, okay?
And suicide. Don't forget suicide.
I don't know if we can do both.
It will be there. Don't worry.
Pick one. All right, guys. And thanks everybody that joined in. And hopefully see you next week, same time.
Goodbye, everyone.
Hopefully.
Later.
As long as the simulation's running.
Yeah, that's right. All right, see ya.
Now we can all go back to our own simulations. Goodbye.
That's right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.